Really, you want to start? Okay. Marilyn, do you want to start? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
And my
I
screen
think
is.
Sharon has added and somebody else. Yeah, your screen is visible.
Oh, maybe 2 minutes again. We'll give like 2 minutes again and then we start.
Okay. Hello.
Okay. I can stop you. Okay. Marilyn, over to you. Marilyn, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I think we should start.
Okay. All right. Good evening to all, and welcome to this session. First of all, happy World Earth Day. The theme for this year is Our Power, Our Planet. So we are going to have 1 hour 30-minute session. We're already like 60 minutes late, and we shall be having 3 speakers. I am Berylin. I am going to be moderating this session. So welcome. So our agenda, we'll have our agenda that is going to run from my session of what AIESEC is all about right down to the take-home messages. Next slide. Okay, so first of all, what is AIESEC? AIESEC, which is the International Student Environmental Coalition, is it's a non-governmental organization that originated from America, and today it is already in 32 countries. So it came to Cameroon in 2017. And our area of focus is climate education, youth leadership and empowerment, civic engagement and climate action, waste management and sustainability, environmental research and community development. So far we have our key achievement. We've reached out to over 45,000 students and planted over 10,000 trees and more. And we have about 20 eco clubs as of now. And we have over 500 youth leaders trained both in schools and in the community. Next slide. So if you're seeing Harrison's screen, that's how you can contact ISEC. I can't see the screen.
Can you see it now?
Okay, yes. So, from the screen, you can get through ISEC on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is now called X, and you can reach us. That's our email address. You can scan the membership application form to register. Next slide. So, World Earth Day. World Earth Day is celebrated every 22nd of April every year globally, and it is dedicated in raising awareness and inspiring action to protect the environment. It was first observed in 1970 and marked the beginning of modern environmental movement, bringing millions of people together to advocate for a healthier, more sustainable planet. Next slide. So the theme, Our Power, Our Planet, is to emphasize the power of individuals and communities to protect the earth, to focus on climate action, clean energy, and sustainability. It's also a way to encourage youth leadership and collective action. So, without much wasting time, we are going to move into our first session that's going to be taken by Chole Njike Reeves. He is an environmental engineer with a master's in environmental engineering who originates from the West. Also, he's an environmental researcher that engaged in solving Africa's environmental challenges. And he is a volunteer at ISEC. So, Reeves, the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much, Marilyn, for welcoming me. I'm grateful to ISEC for the opportunity to share on this day which we are celebrating the World Earth Day. Please, a few minutes while I try to share my screen. Okay, so today we are going to be discussing, as Marilyn has already introduced, the theme for this year's World Earth Day is Our Power, Our Planet. And specifically today we are going to be discussing on understanding the state of our planet. We are going to start by setting the stage with some basic definitions and proceed by looking at various climate change and global warming. We are going to look also at deforestation and biodiversity. We are going to look at pollution, and there's a point that I did not add here. We are going to look at why are we interested in protecting our climate at all, in protecting the earth at all, and we are going to end with a call to action because, of course, this is an awareness raising session. So to set the stage, we proceed with some key definitions. I'm sure most of us here have heard the word climate for a long time. So climate simply refers to the long-term pattern of weather in a region over a period of 30 years. And from there, it graduates to climate change. It's another term which is very common nowadays. which simply refers to the long-term shifts in the global temperatures and weather patterns, and this is primarily driven by human activities, which started since the pre-industrial era. We also have global warming, which refers to the observed increase in the Earth's average surface temperature. And currently, we are at a temperature of 1.2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels as of 2023. And as we progress, we are going to see why we are paying attention on this plus 1.2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. Then we have the concept of biodiversity, which simply refers to the variety of all life forms on the earth. That is the various genes, species of animals, and how they interact to form complex ecosystems. There is also the issue of pollution. I'm sure most of us have heard this word also recurrently, which is simply the introduction of harmful substances or contaminants into our natural environment. And then we have one last term, ecosystem services, which simply refers to the many benefits that we derive from nature. Okay, let's proceed and see how all of these forces interplay when it comes to the well-being of the earth. So looking at climate change and global warming, how does this occur? Climate change usually, not in the normal sense, rays from the sun reaching the earth first of all pass through the ozone layer, the thin lining you can find on the screen. First of all passes through through the ozone layer, which filters out harmful radiations and allows only radiations which are not dangerous to reach the Earth's surface. What happens is this radiation, once it reaches the Earth's surface, it is absorbed. Part of it is absorbed, and the excesses are meant to be released back into the atmosphere. But this is prevented by greenhouse gases which are present in the atmosphere. So they trap this heat, preventing it from escaping, which results in the Earth overheating. And here are some notable greenhouse gases, their percentages, and their various causes, so we can get an idea of how they are emitted into our environment. Then the data concerning climate change, we are currently at 1 plus 1.6 degrees Celsius above the global average temperature since the pre-industrial era. And temperature, this temperature is important. Why? The image before you shows the various scenarios that could play out in case the temperature goes above this amount. At plus 1.5 degrees Celsius, we are experiencing 2 months average length of drought, especially in areas where there is very limited water. At a temperature of plus 2 degrees Celsius, we are already at 4 months of average length of drought. And at a temperature of plus 3 degrees Celsius, we are already at 10 months, that's almost a year. And we know that most life forms on Earth depend on water. So if water is absent, it means there is a repercussion across various ecosystems, which will be very catastrophic. Hence, the focus on the plus 1.2 degrees Celsius temperature. Then we are at the point where the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has reached a record high. And we have seen previously that carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases responsible for climate change, for global warming. So that gives you an idea of why its presence in the atmosphere its quantity in the atmosphere should be controlled. And we are experiencing an average sea rise, that's between 2006 and 2018, of 3.7 millimeters per year. That is why we are going to see cases of frequent floods here and there in different areas across the world. And for those that live in big cities in Yaoundé, most of them will say that the temperatures in those cities is higher than normal. That's because in the last few years we have been experiencing a drastic increase in temperatures. And what does this mean for our local context? Research shows that Africa warms 1.5 times faster than the global average. In some areas, rainy seasons are becoming shorter and more intense, affecting harvest in those areas. Because for a context like that in Africa, where agriculture mainly depends on weather, and there is not enough research to relate weather and agriculture, it is really a problem. And there is Lake Chad, which has shrunk by 90% since the 1960s, threatening which has shrunk by 90% since the 1960s. Here we can see its initial size in 1963, and here we are in 2021, just a little portion. Normally it is a watershed that is shared between 5 countries, but as at today, it is shared, the remaining water body is shared only between 2 countries, Chad and Cameroon. And if proper attention is not given to it, it means in the next years, the lake may completely dry up. And we know that water means life. So this decrease in the size of this lake has threatened the livelihood of over 40 million people. We also have the issue of extreme heat waves across our various cities, droughts, floods here and there, and rising, which are all rising across sub-Saharan Africa. So if we look closely, we are going to notice some severity in the manifestation of these climate change impacts. Severe droughts in areas where there was already limited water supply, and frequent floods in areas where there was already enough water supply. That is due to the increase in water levels, which results in melting of glaciers and increasing water levels. And Africa contributes less than 4% of global emissions, but it bears the heaviest climate burden. Okay, that was it for climate change. Now we move to deforestation and biodiversity, which is another force that is causing changes on our dear Earth. Deforestation, we all know what deforestation stands for: the cutting down of trees without replacement. About 30 million hectares of forest is lost globally per year. That is equivalent to the area of South Korea, and that's about 1/5 the size of Cameroon. What this means is, in 5 years, an area the size of Cameroon is lost in terms of forest land. And about 80% of this of deforestation is linked to agriculture. We are going to see, like in the regions in Cameroon where there is production of cash crops, like in Cote d'Ivoire, for example, large pieces of forest are destroyed for the establishment of cocoa plantations. Let's just look here. Here is a map that shows how the vegetation cover of Yaoundé has changed over the years. This is Yaoundé. This is the map of the city, traced in red. That was in 1985, and here we are in 2025. And we see how the greenery has disappeared over the years. That gives us an idea of the extent of vegetation cover loss due to the need to satisfy human wants. We have one good thing is that we have the second largest forest basin, and Cameroon, which is shared by Cameroon, which is the Congo Basin. So that is one of the reasons why. Why Cameroon in particular should be concerned about climate change, because if you notice, Cameroon is at the crossroads of various biodiversity hotspots. We first of all saw the Lake Chad. Now we are seeing again Cameroon is part of the Congo Basin, and Cameroon loses about 5,000 hectares of forest yearly. Then coming to biodiversity loss, we already saw the definition of biodiversity, the variety of life forms on the earth. About 1 million species are threatened with extinction. 1 million species. That's a huge number. And about 68% of wildlife population has declined since 1970. That's more than half of the wildlife population that we have that has been lost in such a short period of time. And another notable aspect is that the rate of extinction of these species or of these animals or of biodiversity loss is happening 3 times faster than the natural background rate. Which, of course, we know that everything that lives must die. But what is happening is due to human intervention. This is happening at a faster rate than normal. And in Cameroon, we have about 9,000 animal species. That's why we are going to hear severally Cameroon is called Africa in miniature, because of its rich biodiversity hotspot. So why does the forest matter? We have just looked at the Congo rainforest. Forests act as carbon sinks. They absorb about 1.1 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. We just saw the link between carbon dioxide and the greenhouse effect. That's more than half of all of Europe's emissions. And forests also help to regulate the water cycle by regulating rainfall across expanses of area where they are found. Like in West and Central Africa, the Congo Basin is responsible for regulating rainfall across this region. And these forests are home to a large number of biodiversity, that is various plant species, various plants and animal species. And one thing why diversity is necessary is because the more diverse a system is, the more resilient that system can become to changes affecting. We just spoke of climate change. But if there is a huge biodiversity loss, that fact in itself reduces the chance of our system to bounce back to its original state in case of a change. Another reason why forests are important is they serve as livelihoods for a lot of people, especially in Africa here, where most of our fuel still comes from wood. Most of our furniture is still made from wood. I'm not sure there's any of us here who does not have at least 10 objects in their homes which is not made of wood. But this forest loss is also associated to changing rainfall patterns and rising temperatures locally. And there is also the issue of logging, agricultural expansion, and charcoal production, which are destroying hectares and hectares of forest land every year. Then we attack another very vital force, which is pollution. And in this case, we are going to be treating pollution in the air, water, and land. Air pollution is responsible for about 7 million deaths globally. That is more than malaria and HIV/AIDS combined. And studies have shown that 99% of the world breathes air that exceeds the WHO limits. That means we are inhaling toxic substances every day, which becomes very risky for our health. In Cameroon, there is the issue of vehicle emissions, burning of waste, household biomass, using biomass for cooking. Those are the top sources of air pollution in our context. And this mostly affects children and elderly. Why? Children's organs are not yet fully developed and hence cannot effectively combat those pollutants. And for elderly people, most of their systems have been weakened over time, and this could lead to long-term health effects. And we have also the issue of water pollution, where about 2 billion people are drinking contaminated water globally, and 80% of wastewater, 80% of wastewater is discharged into oceans and rivers. That is a high percentage. And the Wuri River and other coastal waters in Cameroon face severe plastic and industrial waste. That's because there are regulations that exist, but at the level of implementation there are lapses. And a lot of deaths are also linked to waterborne diseases. Then concerning land pollution, about 2.12 billion tons of waste is generated annually, but less than 20% of this waste is recycled. Most of the waste ends up in soils or water. Plastic waste is also destroys farmland fertility and poison food chains because they can accumulate in organisms, and when those organisms are consumed by higher organisms in the chain or the web, the contamination is propagated, which could lead to long-term health effects. And in Yaoundé and Douala and other big cities in Cameroon, informal dump sites are the order of the day. In fact, one time Yaoundé was nicknamed the stinking city, and I don't think it has changed that much. But in the face of all of these forces, why do we really need to pay attention to the earth? What does the earth offer us for us to give it our time and attention to protect it? Initially, we evoked the concept of ecosystem services. These are all the benefits that we derive from our environment. And studies have shown that nature provides services worth an estimated 125 to 140 trillion US dollars per year. That is nearly 1.5 times the global GDP. That means if our ecosystem is degraded, we suffer. And the four categories of ecosystem services are, first of all, provisioning services, which are direct goods that we get from nature, the raw materials that we need, the fresh water, the food, the medicinal resources. The phones that we are using now to do this to carry out this meeting, the metals that were used for its manufacture were extracted from the earth, so that is a provisioning service. And there are also next we have regulatory services, which are basically how the earth controls the various resources and cycles that occur. We have like water purification, forests that absorb about 2.6 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. We have wetlands that function as filters, filtering out pollutants from water and at the same time preventing flooding. And additionally, we have cultural significance, cultural services that we can derive from ecosystems around us. For example, ecotourism, which generates about 600 billion US dollars per year, an industry that supports millions of jobs. That is the ecosystem indirectly meeting our needs. We also have some communities where the forest there, some type of animals there are a cultural identity and have its spiritual significance tied to them. For example, I heard in India that rats are considered holy animals. And we also have supporting services, which are the foundations on which our lives depend on. If nutrients are not recycled, then it means that we are not going to have anything to eat tomorrow. Soil formation, we have aspects such as photosynthesis. Soil takes about 500 years to build 1 inch. And we have forests and oceans that produce about 50 to 80% of the Earth's oxygen, the air that we breathe. So all of these are the various ways in which nature is beneficial to us, in which nature is beneficial to us. And all of these highlight the need for protecting our environment because preserving our planet is a collective and an individual duty. And it's a responsibility we owe coming generations. So here are some few call to actions that we can carry out as individuals, as students and educators, as communities to help protect our environment. And because you joined this webinar, that is already a step that is already taking a step in the right direction towards the protection of our dear earth. Okay, thank you all for your keen attention, and I'll be waiting to hear from you for any questions and possible discussions. Thank you, Marilyn, for giving me the floor.
All right, thank you, Engineer Wills, for that presentation. That was quite elaborate. So we are going to be moving on to our next speaker, and the next module is going to be taken by Engineer Sharon. Can you hear me?
I said I go and put my
Can you all hear me? Can someone unmute and tell me if they can hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, I can get you clearly, Marilyn.
Okay, so I was saying that our next speaker is Engineer Sharon Tafomba, who is an environmental engineer holding a master's degree. She is also a climate advocate who originates from the West. She's a lecturer in a higher institute in Bamenda, and beyond her academic and professional credentials, she is also a volunteer at ISEC, contributing to environmental advocacy. So Sharon is going to be telling us about sustainable living. Sharon, the floor is yours.
Is Sharon there?
It seems like Sharon is not longer there. I don't know. Probably network issues.
Maybe we can go to Cecile, and then if Sharon comes in later.
Okay. Okay, so our next speaker is Atu Cecile B. She originates from the
Sharon is
Northwest.
back. Maybe let's hear if she wants to.
Sharon, can you hear us? Sharon, can you unmute yourself and take the session?
Okay, go ahead, Cecile.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Sharon. We can hear you.
Can you start from the first slide?
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. Good evening, everyone. Um, so today is World Earth Day, as Meredith likely said. The theme of today is our power, our Earth. So I'm going to be talking on some sustainable strategies of maintaining our Earth in general. Today is World Earth Day. So we have sustainable living, and the first question we're going to be asking ourselves is, uh, what can we do to have a sustainable living? Or what can we do to have a sustainable Earth? Today is World Earth Day, so we need to take that into consideration. Second slide. So, as an introduction, we have sustainable living involves making choice that reduces our environmental impact. It helps preserve resources for future generations. That is, it's any action which we take while taking into consideration the future generation. Like, for example, today we went out for some outreaches, we're carrying out activities taking into consideration the future generation, planting of trees and crops to maintain, to reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere in order to preserve the future and upcoming generation. So sustainable living is all about carrying out positive actions to maintain the environment and to maintain the future generation. Yes, next slide. So the one of the main ways or the most important ways by which we can live in a sustainable earth system is taking into practice these three formulas. Or take is reuse, reduce, and recycle. Reduce here is minimizing waste by avoiding. Just need to take into consideration responsibility. For example, during our daily activities, we can be going to the market. We can decide that since we're going to market almost every day, it will not really be important for us to be buying plastic papers every day. We can just get one sack moto, we use and reuse to wash and reuse it again. By so doing, we are reducing the availability of the plastic papers in the environment or the availability of those plastic papers in our different houses. We equally have the principle of reuse, which is reusing the same material over and over again. For example, you can have a piece of cloth which is not of your size again. Then for it to maybe discard it or just throw it to the environment, you can give it to a junior one who can still make good use of the dress. We equally have recycling. Recycling, that is changing the form of material to another useful form. Yes, we can equally talk about organic waste in this case. Taking organic waste to produce maybe composting, use for agriculture, that's recycling. Using organic waste for the production of environmentally friendly gas, that's biogas, that's the recycling process. So reuse here is the ability for us to use an item multiple times instead of discarding the item. We equally have recycling, which is the ability of converting waste into reusable materials. The conversion of organic waste into maybe, for example, biogas, the conversion of organic waste into compost, and several other forms. So we have to take into consideration all of this because it's very important. So next slide. Equally, we can talk about the energy conservation, which is the transformation of energy conservation, that is the maintenance of the ability to maintain energy in the ecosystem. This energy conservation here, you can talk about the use of solar energy for electricity and heating, the ability to adopt biogas for cooking and energy, the use of energy efficient appliances to reduce consumption, that is use of solar energy, the ability of transforming sun or getting energy from the atmosphere to generate electricity. That's, for example, talking about solar panel and so on. We equally talk about to adopt biogas for cooking. In this case, it's like maybe producing biogas from organic waste or organic substances. That will equally help in reducing the availability of those organic waste in the environment, which will help in the sustainability and the maintenance of our earth. Next slide. So waste management at home now. The whole of today we have been talking about World Earth Day, World Earth Day. If our earth starts from our different locations, we need to start taking actions at our different locations before we go out to the community. We need to develop individual responsibility at the level of our houses. So we have waste management at home here. We have to develop the habit and the attitude of separating our waste. That is, separating them into biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. Just as we know, biodegradable waste, these are waste which have the ability of decomposing, such as peelings of ripe plantain, peelings of irish, and many others. And non-biodegradable waste here has to do with plastic waste, plastic papers, and other waste materials which cannot decompose, or which has the ability of taking a longer period of time in the ecosystem before disappearing. We equally have compost organic waste. Compost organic waste here is like the ability of reusing our organic waste in the house to produce compost. That is a recycling process, using organic waste to as a form of nutrient to grow our plants and crops in our different houses. Like I said, responsibility begins at home. We first of all carry action in our different houses before we go out to the community. And we equally have to develop the ability of avoiding single-use plastics or single-use materials. For example, most at times I used to like to take examples for ladies. Most ladies will have the habit of having 30 pairs of shoes in their different houses. That's wastage. You can see just develop a responsibility of getting a long-lasting tennis that can stay for years. That is reducing the ability of you having a lot of wastage in your house or a lot of availability of materials, because after a period of time you learn waste and you move to the environment and you move to the ecosystem. That's how you affect our earth. Next slide. So this next thing now is community level waste management. Responsibility begins in the house, and from the house now we move to our community, to our different our job sites, our different areas, our family members, visitors, and the rest. So responsibility begins in the house before you go out to the community. Community here is your interaction with others or with the environment, or a distance away from your house. How do you behave when you're in the community? For example, as environmentalists, we need to take into consideration the maintenance of our earth. You can be traveling in a bus, maybe you're eating something, there's a piece of paper, you just decide to throw it through the window. That's not a positive action you're carrying out, because responsibility begins in the house. When you build that habit from the house, you be conscious even when you're in the community, when you're in the bus traveling, when you're maybe in your job site, or when you're in a meeting with others. You develop the responsibility naturally from your house or from the attitude you've developed from your house. So we have participated in community cleanup campaigns. We all have to start taking action towards participating with community cleanup campaign, because when you carry the action when you carry the action, the others are seeing and are learning from you, and the upcoming generation are equally learning from what the present generation is doing. For example, we need to develop that habit and that free willingness to always participate for cleanup campaigns, cleaning up of streets, and developing personal responsibility of maintaining the streets clean, not discarding the waste anyhow or throwing waste materials all around the street. We can equally talk about support recycling programs. We need to always have the habit of supporting recycling programs. For example, we participate in workshops, develop new skill, try to learn from others how they're doing it or how are they, what's the importance of doing it, and learn to share ideas, distribute your ideas with others. Encourage others in recycling, participate and support the ideas of recycling so as to maintain our earth for future generations. Educate others on proper waste disposal. We need to education starts from tender age. Even when we have our children in the house, we need to start educating them that the way you discard your waste matters. The way you put this one, the way you separate your waste matter, the way you discard your waste matter, where you discard your waste equally matter. That's all about education. We need to also create awareness in schools and community, marketplaces and job places, so that all individuals will be responsible of the actions they are carrying out or the actions they are taking. Next slide. So in conclusion, today is our World Earth Day, and the theme is Our Power, Our Planet. So any small action by individuals leads to big environmental impact. So we need to understand that any action you carry out has an impact in the environment or has an impact for the earth. So we need to all join hands together to start today for a sustainable future. Thanks very much for your keen attention.
Thank you, Ms. Sharon, for that eloquent presentation. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. So
Okay, so
maybe
anybody will write.
Questions, you have questions at the end, right? Because of time.
Yes, I was about to say that you can jot down your questions and we are going to have them all at the end of the presentations. So our next speaker, Ms. Atu Yvette Cecile B., who originates from the Northwest region. She is a holder of a master's degree in climate change, biodiversity conservation, and ecosystem services, with 4 years of experience in coordinating community development programs. She has engaged in multilateral framework, and she is a dedicated volunteer at ISEC. So, Cecile, the floor is yours.
Hello, Marilyn. Hello, everybody. Marilyn, thank you for the presentation, for the introduction. Wow. Okay, so my slides, please.
Yeah, I'm just pulling it up. Technology is all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it visible?
Yes, it is. But you started from the last slide.
All right. Okay. Just a sec, please. Okay, let me see.
Okay. So hello, everybody. Happy World Earth Day. So, as Marilyn said, my name is Atu Yvette Cecile B. I'm an environmental engineer, climate activist, dedicated volunteer at ISEC Cameroon. And I'm going to be talking on youth action and community impacts. Next slide, please. Yes. So I'm going to begin by giving you these statistics from the United Nations People Fund, African Union, and the World Economic Forum. 60% of Africa's population is under 25 years old. That already tells us that we have a huge role as young people in Africa and in Cameroon particularly in environmental protection. That means that 2/3 of African population, that's 2/3 of Cameroonian population is young, is under 25. And, you know, as Cameroonians growing up, we always hear this thing in French that they say, la jeunesse c'est le fer de lance de la nation. And then we'll have the famous sarcastic people saying, mais le fer a rouillé. It's not true. Ça n'a pas rouillé. Youth, we are not just the future. We are the present day agents of change. Our action starts now. And it also has to do with advocacy and awareness. Because if you notice, youth today are much more intentional. We see it on our digital space. We see it on social media. We see it in climate action. We see it in our communities. Youth today have taken the forefront of environmental protection. And they are innovating. our engineer Tafomba, she was talking about sustainability, and you have issues, stuff like biogas units, urban gardens. You have many of these guys doing renewable energy. Most are young people. And so we have a great role to play in environmental protection. Next slide, please.
This is just my computer is doing things that Napoleon left undone.
Okay. So I'm just going to dive directly into community projects. We mentioned tree planting and cleanups, but those are not the only things. Those are not the only projects as young people we can carry out in our communities. We have tree planting, of course, controlled tree planting, because you don't plant any type of species anyway. You have to respect ecosystem and so on. And so if you want to carry out this kind of projects, you can come to ISEC for consultancy, and we're going to guide you. You also have community cleanups. ISEC also does a lot of this, and it's very common also. We see it on social media. Youth who decide to go out, clean their streets, clean their neighborhoods, clean the vicinity around their workspaces, and so on. We also have the creation of ecological clubs or environmental clubs. ISEC too encourages this. You can also encourage it in your school clubs. Generally these are children, or these are young people who are between the ages of 10 to 15 to 18. And I think this is the period where, when a child understands that climate action is now, he grows with it, and you have the SDGs following and flowing. So we could also encourage those, and ISEC does exactly that, like you can see in the pictures here. And then we have digital campaigns. This is very serious matter. For example, you see this very sarcastic picture of a guy who is sitting in front of a waste. This was a campaign that was launched in 2024. I don't know if we remember, in Yaoundé.
Yeah.
We remember Yaoundé, where we used to take funny, like sarcastic pictures or ironical pictures in front of the bins, in front of the terrible waste condition that Yaoundé is. Like it has not changed much, but what the problem is, it actually led to a solution. Because now in Yaoundé, you would have municipalities who have agents who go about sweeping the town and so on, but Yaoundé is still drowning in waste. So we still need such action. So next slide, please. I'm going to be very fast so that we catch up with time. I'm going to talk about how to start a local environmental initiative as a young person. Yes. It all starts with identifying a problem. It's very simple. Your neighbor, your street, your neighborhood, just the street. You should identify a problem, an environmental problem. I took like the picture. This picture is from one of Harrison's articles. I think he wrote on ISEC website that I got this. Like, this is a problem. This is on the street. You just have an illegal waste dump site, and the thing is growing. So this is a problem. This is already a problem. So when you identify a problem, you can start an environmental initiative. Now, the next step is very crucial: building a team. And building a team is not superficial. Building a team is not superficial. It's just, my neighbors, my friends. Yeah, 2-0. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, 404. It's very important too. Yeah, 404. You guys can just come together and be like, okay, 3-4 of us, we clean our street. We clean our work site and stuff like that. That's very simple to build your team. And then you plan your action. What are you going to do? Okay, you're going to put a bin, or you're going to clean, or you're going to plant a tree. You have to know exactly what you're going to do. And then you design a simple action that you're going to do. You mobilize resources. This is generally where there's lots of problems. Of course, it's not easy to get funds and stuff. But today with social media, I believe that if you identify a problem, you come with a well-structured plan. You come even your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your Twitter, and you be like, guys of your own day 6, this is a waste bin, this is a this, we want to clean. People are going to donate. We see those donate. We see the way people donate online for people they have never met. Why not for concrete action that is going to help the community? And the fifth and the most important is documentation, action, like pictures, videos, blow your trumpet, put it out there, let people see, because everybody is Thomas. You have to see before you believe. You cannot just get into something that you hear audio, like people say audio money. You want to see it, you want to see the action. So blow your trumpet. Never be modest about showing your actions, because it's nobody takes a train that is stagnant, right? We even say, for those who are in church, we say, come and join the moving train. When a train is moving, everybody wants to join that train. So blow your trumpet, document, put it out there, keep putting those pictures, keep putting the little actions do big things. So put it out there. This is how you start a local environmental initiative. And if you are consistent, it gets to where we see these big, very big organizations. It all starts with little action. Okay, I think I'm done with how to start a local environmental initiative. And next slide, please. Okay, so the time to act is now, like today, like when you go after this webinar. Those who are, if you attending this webinar is already like conscious of the fact that there is a problem. So it's now. You can do so by joining or starting an environmental movement today. You can volunteer for a community project, like volunteering for ISEC. You can share this message with your network, sharing on social media. So many of us who are participating in this webinar, sharing the webinar on their social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on. So this is already amazing. And I would end this presentation with a quote from Margaret Mead. She was a cultural anthropologist, American cultural anthropologist of blessed memory. She said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. That means that the only thing that has ever changed the world is a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens. So never think your action is too small. That's what is going to change the world. So thank you very much for your kind attention. I was just trying to be running so that we have time for our questions. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cecile, for that presentation. It was a powerful one. The call to action was very motivating. Okay, so we are moving into our next session, which is the interactive session. We are going to have some question and answers from the participants, and we are also going to have a contribution as well. So the floor is open for questions and answer. If you have any question, you can raise your hand, or if no one is talking, you can unmute yourself and talk. I can see Sharon raising her hand. She probably has a question. So the floor is open.
Sorry, it's a mistake. I don't have a question for now.
Okay, while waiting for participants to articulate their questions, I have one question for each of the speakers. I am going to start with Mr. Reeves, who talked to us about understanding the state of our planet. So, according to you, please, if there's a question, or participants are also encouraged to chip in their contributions. So it is not only for the speakers, you can chip in your contributions as well. So which sector in Cameroon contribute the most to greenhouse gas emission, and where should intervention start?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Um, which sector contributes the most to greenhouse emissions? And first of all, we have the fact that I think more than 70% of the fuels that we use are fossil based, fossil or biomass based, and the emission from there the emission from there is quite significant. So I think the first focus point will be an energy transition, transitioning from prevalent fossil or biomass based fuels into with other more sustainable alternatives such as solar, such as renewable, such as hydroelectric power, such as wind turbines in areas where it can be installed. I think that would be the first priority area.
Yeah, maybe I could also chip in there. Right, but let me first of all start by appreciating our very excellent speakers. This is a lot. I've learned a lot, and there's a lot of knowledge packed in it in a webinar like this. When Engineer Reeves was presenting, I was like, this is a full course in a university that he has compressed in less than 30 minutes. Uh, and but it was so interesting. It was really good. I really hope that we learned a lot. And say Sharon also with this practical knowledge, and Cecile just almost killed us with motivation. But these are really important, and that's why we have webinars like this. Just to talk about the question Marilyn asked, like he said, the energy sector is contributes significantly to emissions. In if you look at globally, it's always the energy sector, and if you streamline to Cameroon, it's still the energy sector, and so that's a big issue. And when they talk about this energy sector, sometimes the transport sector is considered as part of the energy sector. So if we want to look at what is the easiest or maybe the pathway towards reducing that emission, it has to be cross-cutting. If you focus on the energy sector, the first thing you look at is sometimes they look at electricity. Where does the electricity come from? How can we reduce emission from the electricity sector? I mean, generation for industrial consumption, for household consumption. You look at cross cutting. Is it solar that is available? Is it wind? Is it the other clean sources of energy? And something that's what very interesting. Most of the time we hear that hydroelectric power is renewable, but in Cameroon, hydroelectric power is not considered renewable in our energy mix because when it is greater than 5 megawatts, the negative impacts of those hydroelectric power plants, they outweigh the positive impact. So sometimes hydroelectric power is not considered renewable in energy mix, but in other countries it's considered renewable. So that's something. And then we can also look at the other sectors. For example, the transport sector, something that we're also talking about. How can emissions in the transport sector be reduced? You also look at where are the sources, because you look at the sources of the emission. The transport sector, you have you have cars that are more than 20 years old. The emissions are really high, and then the energy efficiency. What kind of energy efficient? Because there are some fuels that have a lot of sulfur content. They have a lot of substances that causes that emission to be high. So at that level, at the energy sector, it should be cross-cutting. I think another very important sector in Cameroon, because if we look at the presentation that Engineer Rees did, we look at our biodiversity, we look at the forest that we have. So another very important sector in Cameroon is what they call AFOLO, agriculture, forestry, and land use. So this sector also contributes a lot to emission. So that's also a priority sector for Cameroon. So how do we look at land use change that reduces emission? Agroforestry, they're talking about agroforestry now. and all these things. So, but we can also go to waste, which is also a sector, and so it's really supposed to be cross-cutting. Like we cannot just, yeah, that's what I just wanted to add in this contribution.
Okay, thank you, Sir Harrison, for your contribution. I can see someone has raised the hands. Asat.
Patrick,
I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing well. Yeah, Patrick, you can unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, thanks for giving me the floor. Good evening, everyone, and I am very happy, and I'm very happy to be part of this. The presentations were all rich and inspiring. My question goes, I want to know what's the role of the government. Issue that historically you all know the role of the government in, especially the Cameroon government in environmental management and everything. But I believe there are guys here with experience. I want to know, with the little time that you've been in the environmental management campaign and everything, I want to know, do you really feel the follow up or the do you really feel the follow up of the government, or you just have this feeling that government has abandoned environmental management in Cameroon or what? I want to really know. Because when I usually listen to environmental, I don't want to use the term activist or environmental conscious youth, it's like they are left on their own. And most of them mostly I believe they mostly rely on international grants and whatsoever. I want to know what's the role of the Cameroon government exactly in the fight or in the management of our environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think Sharon wants to answer the question.
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I think for the role of the government has a role to play, but with the situation of our country, actually, they don't actually follow some rules. But the government has a duty to play as far as the environment is concerned. Like yearly, there are some projects which is being launched by the government for there's some projects which being sponsored and launched by the government to sponsor environmental problems. But most of the time, like for example, recently there was a project in the Gwakotunja, that's in the subdivision, that was in January, whereby the government signed out some money to solve some issues of waste management in Gwakotunja. But some youths in Bamenda were being asked to write proposed projects or to submit some proposals. But most of the time, when you submit proposals, the government, with the nature of our country, the government will maybe sign out money, but the money will not actually reach the, 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 the individuals who deposited the project proposal. So they will just like maybe pay you for writing the project proposal, or they will just give you an amount of money for writing that proposal, but they will not actually like try to realize the project. So it's that's the duty of the government, but most of the time it does not. They don't actually realize their duties. Let me say so. So that's the limitation now with our country. And for other cases now where there are some license which are supposed to be offered for some particular projects, but most of the time they for those licenses you can still carry out an activity where you don't have the license as far as you know the right person to who you can give an envelope. You just Like you just realize their work, or you know the right person you can meet. You can meet somebody and maybe discuss. You can still be doing the wrong thing, or you can still be carrying out an action which is not environmentally friendly. They meet you while you're doing it. You just know the way you discuss with them, and everything will be settled. So I think this our upcoming youth now will just need to generate some strategies of changing that mentality. That's my own point of view.
Okay, Engineer Harrison is raising a hand, so just unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, can you hear me? If anyone, I wanted to chip in something again, like concerning that question. Patrick, that's a very tough question. That's a very tough. That's a very tough question. If you've maybe seen if you've been with the government side, the policy side of the environment sector, you understand why that is very tough. But the truth is that if you government has a significant role to play. If you look at the administrative setup of Cameroon, if you look at which ministry is there in charge of environmental policy, which ministry is there, because for example, the government is the one that sets the direction that the country needs to take in terms of environmental management, in terms of environmental protection, in terms of environmental conservation, in terms of everything. So the government is the one that sets that direction under which is done by those ministries. So they have these policies, they have various instruments that are in place. So sometimes it's also lack of awareness. Young people don't know that this happened. For example, if you look at the Ministry of Environmental Protection, the Environment, Sustainable Development, and this. They have a ministry, they are talking about decentralization. So from ministry, regional delegates, divisional delegates, sub-divisional delegates, and all these things, is they're trying to take that government policy or government action or the direction that the government wants to take to the people. So sometimes it's about how do people approach some of these government officials or these government ministry or these government institutions. But first and foremost, when it comes to environmental management, we have policies, and the truth is that policies don't implement themselves. And if you have done environmental management, you know that there are various stakeholders. There's the government, there's the private sector, there's the industry, there's civil society, there's the general public. Everyone has a role to play when it comes to environmental management. So if the government does a very lofty policy about maybe setting target for deforestation, for this, or for reducing emission to a certain level, and the stakeholders don't play their role. That is just a lofty policy, ends on paper. So that's why we always say, I like this. There's this Cameroonian, Dr. Richard Munang. He always says that policies don't implement themselves. Policy need to be implemented by people, by action, need to translate it to action. And sometimes people need to be involved, right? And I will say again, let me go back to, for example, the Paris Agreement. This is because we're talking about climate change. The Paris Agreement is a global binding, legally binding treaty. Every country has adopted, every country has signed, and because of that Paris Agreement, each country is developing their climate policy or what they want to do to reduce their emission, what they call NDCs, National Determined Contribution. And Cameroon has an NDC. So in that NDC is the climate policy of Cameroon. Cameroon has stated what they want to do across all these sectors to reduce emission to what level, based on the development priorities of the country, based on the realities, based on a lot of factors. So it's a very comprehensive document, it's a comprehensive policies. But without the industry, without the private sector, that just remains a document. Because, for example, if Cameroon says that by 2035, we want to have 25 or 35% of our energy mix has to be renewable energy. Who has to invest in that renewable energy? Is the private sector. These companies, they are supposed to come in. These people are supposed to come in businesses. So if the government signs that policy, they need to make the environment favorable for business people to come in. Another thing is all the other stakeholders, farmers, they need to be involved. And then young people, how do young people get involved in translating that government policy into action at their local level, right? That is what happens. So sometimes I feel sometimes the problem is that young people who are doing environmental work, sometimes that work is disconnected from the national policy in Cameroon. So if you don't know where what you're doing is placed in the national climate policy of Cameroon, the government don't even listen to you. When you approach them, they'll not listen to you. So it's also important that as we as young people, as advocates, we have a role to play. But what we are doing, how does it play in the national policy of the country? Because that's when the government will take you serious. For example, today I was just with Marilyn and an organization contacted me that they see what we are doing a clean air initiative, that there's this company, I don't know if you guys know the company, this Sofaven. So Sofaven wants to open a bottling company in Douala. Sofaven wants to open a bottling company, this plastic bottling company and this beer bottle company. So they called us that according to the environmental management law of Cameroon, before you establish that kind of company, you do an environmental impact assessment, right? To know the detrimental, every project has negative impact on the environment. And the law says that you must do an environmental impact assessment. And part of that environmental impact assessment is that you need to do public consultation. So the population that is supposed to benefit from that project, that is supposed will be impacted by that project negatively, positively, they need to come and ask you questions, need to explain to them, need to answer to them. Because it's from that public consultation that an environmental management plan can be set up by the company to maybe to deal with the negative externalities of that production company. So that lady called us and was saying that there will be this public consultation, right? That will Clean Air Initiative like to participate in that public consultation? With the after discussing, yeah, yes, would like to participate. So before I go for that public consultation, I first of all research the kind of industry. What are they supposed to be producing? What kind of pollutants would they be producing? So me as a citizen, as civil society, as a watchdog, what I'll be going there to find out is how will they deal with their air pollutants? Because the law in Cameroon says that this is what the company is supposed to do to make sure that the particulate matter that they are producing, all the air pollutant is properly taken care of. So I'm going there to ensure that that company can do what will respond to me, and there's a plan to make sure that what they construct doesn't affect the people of that area. I'm just giving you this as a simple example. This is me as an informed citizen, though I'm of the civil society. An informed citizen could also go there. But before you ask those companies questions, you also need to be aware. So we need to know some of these laws and some of these details. So, Patrick, I don't know if I've just given maybe a fair response to your question, but it's a question that cannot be answered in one sitting. But that's how things work. Young people, so activists, they have a role to play. Advocates, they have a role to play. The citizens in the community, they have a role to play. The good thing about activists is that they are very knowledgeable. So they read a lot of information. They can spread awareness. They can tell, for example, us as activists, we can go back to that community where they are constructing that industry. We tell them the negative impacts because we know and we've researched. So they have information, they can make a decision. And you know that from public consultation, most of the times, action is taken. Otherwise, the government will not issue the payment, right? So they need to address the grievances of all the people. That's just an example when it comes to environmental management. It's the same with all the sectors. We don't just need to be activists. We need to also to look at what is happening nationally, locally, and all those things. And Ceci gave us how do you lead from identifying problems to solution, to being active there. So that's what I can just say.
Okay. Okay. Thank you guys so much for your answers. But my takeaway this night is that if your actions or your plans as an environmental activist or as an environmental protector does not rhyme with the government policies or maybe the international policies, it means you're like kind of like not really understanding what you're doing. So that's my takeaway this night. Thank you very much. And to remind, I'm happy that the lady called Isaac because I'm the one that forwarded the contact. She's my classmate.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
thank you.
Okay, okay.
Yes, I'm the one that forwarded the contact.
You see,
She
we
asked
need
me for
contact.
an environmental. She asked me for an environmental association. I said that I'm a member. So I gave her. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick, for that. Thank you so much, Harrison, for chipping in to answer that question. I don't know. Are there any questions in the room? If there are questions, you can raise your hand or mute yourself and ask your question, or even if it's a contribution, you can raise your hand, unmute yourself, and talk. So I have a second question, which goes to the speaker, Engineer Shalom. Why do you think sustainable living is still difficult for people to adopt, especially in developing countries like Cameroon? Shalom.
There's no light, Mamenda. There's no internet. I'm just kidding.
Okay, while she's struggling to connect, I have also a question for Miss Cecile. She Her presentation was all about motivating youth to take action and carry out community impact. So, can you share a success story or your success story of a youth-led environmental action that has created real impact?
Okay, thank you, Marilyn, for the question. And thanks to everybody who's been contributing to this webinar already. Okay, I'll take, for example, the Green City initiative that we carried out after a workshop by ISEC on civic engagement. That was in 2024, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
We did a project to reduce urban heat in Yaoundé, and over 100 households benefited from fruit trees that we planted in around the Fandena neighborhood. It's in Yaoundé 5 subdivision. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, with one of the guys with whom we did the project, we were just, he lives around there. So we were talking about like doing a monitoring and evaluation. And he decided to just, stroll around to see. And it was really a wonderful, it was wonderful to see that those 100 households which benefited from that project still have those trees in their various compounds, and we are hoping that they will start harvesting fruit, because we focus on fruit trees. We are hoping that in the next 1 or 2 years we'll be harvesting fruit from those trees. So you have neighborhoods which were all totally gray. That means everywhere was almost cemented, having trees, 100, having trees, and hoping to have harvest fruit from those trees. So for me, it was amazing. And that's, for example, one of the projects we did under ISEC, from a workshop from ISEC with funding from ISEC.
Okay, thank you, Cecile, for sharing your experience with us and motivating us in carrying actions and for leading by examples and not just words. I see Mr. Harrison raising his hand, so I'll leave the floor to him.
Okay, so I'm happy with that success story from that Ceci was saying. It's really like I remember the workshop in 2014, right? In 2024 it was really great. Civic engagement and environmental education for climate action. Very interesting. So I just wanted to say something about the question you asked to Shalom, who is probably the no network. So why is it difficult? What is hindering Cameroonians from adopting sustainable lifestyle, sustainable practices? First thing, there are two things I want to say. The first thing is that, which is human, is inherent in every human being, is resistance to change. People resist change. Every human being resists change, right? Regardless of where you are. So that's a human nature that you need to fight. So sometimes when they're talking about sustainable lifestyle, you need to make it as convenient as possible for people. Because if it is not convenient, they'll switch to their default that they are already used to. So there's this push and pull factor. There should be this pull factor that will draw them to the sustainable lifestyle. And the first pull factor should be cost. Cost, efficiency, comfort, and all these things that human beings like. So those factors should really be there. And unfortunately, sometimes what drives human being in terms of sustainable lifestyle is this. For example, I can give you a sustainable lifestyle. If you look at if you go to your home, electric bulbs, right? If you look at the bulbs that people use in their homes, switching from this incandescent to maybe LED, which is less energy consuming, it is sometimes it maybe doesn't shine as bright as maybe the other one, and it produces less heat. Sometimes if you calculate the cost of a home switching from incandescent bulb to LEDs, the savings that they'll have maybe for a year, it's so much. But most of the times people don't calculate that. They don't calculate the stress that they will have to go through to change all those bulbs and all these things. So you need to make it as easy as possible for people to switch. And then the next factor that I would say is lack of awareness. You are just not aware of sustainable alternatives, right? You are not just aware of sustainable alternative. That's why awareness is very important, because when they are aware, they know the benefits, and then it should be cost saving. Because a key thing about sustainability is that it should be cost saving over time. Like if you switch to solar panels in 10 years, how much money would you have saved compared to using the other electricity company? So those are things that people need to consider. And another thing that maybe is causing people is greenwashing. Maybe greenwashing is not so common in Cameroon. The greenwashing is a big factor in Cameroon. If you take, for example, the kind of art, look for example, I'm not saying a bad thing about beer or alcohol. If you look at the kind of art that beer or alcohol produces, that the people consume. Look at the art. Sometimes the arts that they give are so convincing. And so that's what I want to say. Shalom is here. But really, I think we should round up maybe in 3 minutes.
Sharon, can you quickly add to that, or we should just move forward?
Maybe she did not hear the question.
Sharon, are you there? Okay, I think she's having difficulties to connect.
Like we asked the question again. I did not get the question. My neighbor was not stable.
The question is, why do you think sustainable living is still difficult for people to adopt, especially in developing countries?
Repeat the question.
Why do you think sustainable living is still difficult for people to adopt, especially in developing countries?
Okay, I think it's maybe because of maybe their living standard, poverty, and equally uh, unawareness. Like maybe they are not aware of the action that taking. Maybe they're not aware of the actions they're taking, the impact of the actions they're taking. That's lack of awareness, and equally poverty because some of them might be aware. Like I can use a normal example for a town like maybe Bamenda where there's no Isakam. Uh, People carry out actions, they are aware of the impact they are doing, but due to the fact that there's no Isakam carrying the waste, they are forced to discard their waste all over the environment. And equally lack of infrastructures or availability of resources. So I think maybe that's some of the reasons why this sustainable living is quite difficult in countries like Cameroon.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you all for participating in the question and answer session. Thank you for your contributions. I think there were no further questions for the agenda, and we finished just on time. We started late, so we extended just by 15 minutes. So uh, I would like to give a take-home message. It's going to be as per presenter, so that if you did not listen all along, if you came in late, you should grab something. According to Engineer Reeve, who was our first presenter, who was presenting on the topic understanding the state of our planet. From his presentation, we can all see that climate change is very much real, and it is not a myth as earlier thought. We all see how the earth warms up like 1.5 times faster, and it faces floods and droughts year in, year out. Our forests are rapidly disappearing, and we are losing our resources, our biodiversity, and pollution is also threatening our health. So action is everyone's responsibility. This crisis is urgent, but solution exists, and collective action today can protect our future. Moving along to Engineer Shalom's presentation, was talking about sustainability, sustainable living. What can we do? Sorry, they just see slide. Let me try to. They just see slides.
That's not sustainable.
My battery is damn low. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So from what Engineer Shalom said, sustainable living starts with our small action and our daily choices by reducing waste, reducing materials, recycling our property, saving energy, and managing waste properly. When an individual and community take action together, they protect natural resources and build a cleaner and healthier city, which is more sustainable for the future. And from Cecile, who presented on youth action and community impact. From there, I gathered that youths are not just the future, they are the present day agents of change. They have the power to fight and to protect and rebuild our planet. So they should carry out their little actions as individuals and as community by planting trees, by doing cleanup, holding advocacy campaign, and educating their communities for a better future. So here is my take-home message for all of you, and my call to action is that you should be reminded that your small action counts, and together we can shape and rebuild a healthier planet. So I want to thank all our presenters who made it for this session and up to the end. And I want to thank all the participants who stayed even though we started late and finished late. So thank you both so much for joining this session. Hopefully we'll have another session. We'll have another webinar in the future, in the nearest future actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. Okay.
So good night to you all.
I can stop streaming now. Okay. So this video is available on Facebook.